West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's a member of the January 6th investigation. He's chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, and I think you read that better than I did.
No, trust me, you did it better. I can check myself against the tape. But let me ask about that. I believe from my own research and own reporting on the history of the Justice Department, particularly when they're confronting serious contentions like sedition, like treason, like insurrection, that people with a lot of political power haven't often been held to account, specifically in the realm of criminal law. You are saying that that would be a travesty for the country and it would put us down the road toward giving up our democracy. Do you say that as a warning because you're worried that's what's going to happen? Or do you believe that we are on track to have a new kind of accountability where really nobody is above the law?
I certainly hope that it's the latter, that we're going to see a different kind of accountability where it doesn't matter what your position is or was, that you are treated equally before the law. But I am concerned about it. It's taken the Justice Department a long time to get to the point where it is. They moved quickly with respect to the foot soldiers who broke into the building and beat police officers, but they moved very slowly when it came to people higher up in the organization of this assault on our democracy. So I am concerned with it. And one of the reasons for a criminal referral by Congress is for accountability, and not just of the perpetrators, but accountability of our Justice Department and our justice system. The Justice Department, if they decide not to charge Donald Trump, doesn't actually have to go out and explain why. But the country now knows that Congress, certainly this committee, believes that he's committed criminal acts. And so the country will want to know, why isn't justice being done? And I do think that will cause the Department of Justice to think long and hard about these charges, about the evidence, and about the importance of making sure that presidents don't get a pass.
Congressman Schiff, it's Alex Wagner. Thanks for your time. And I just wanted to ask you about some of the witnesses that you made note of in the exhaustive report, specifically Deputy Chief of Staff Tony Ornato. You say multiple times in the report that the committee found multiple parts of his testimony questionable. You also raise the specter of potential pressure on witnesses, and you raise Kayleigh McEnany and Mark Meadows as other witnesses who had less than forthcoming testimony, to be euphemistic about it. Is it your opinion that Donald Trump or his allies may have been pressuring these witnesses to say or not say certain things to the committee? And is that something the DOJ should investigate in terms of witness tampering?
I think the department should investigate these issues, and we are concerned about it. When a witness is told basically that, the president or the former president is reading these transcripts, is basically told, we're going to know what you said and that's going to matter, and also is given incentives like, hey, we've got this cushy job where you can live very comfortably, then yes, that's designed to influence that witness's testimony. Whether that goes across the line to be prosecutable will be up to the Department of Justice. But we did spell out, where we had serious questions about the credibility of witnesses, where it seemed to contradict other evidence. You mentioned Mr. Ornato, the idea that the head of the president's detail wouldn't know about any of the intelligence that the Capitol might be the subject of an attack on January 6th, when there were multiple streams of intelligence coming in, seems pretty far-fetched. He was either not being honest with the committee, or he was being incredibly negligent in the performance of his job.
Congressman Schiff, Ari Melber here. I wanted to ask about what we've learned from this probe. The New York Times today described this as one of the most significant congressional probes in the modern era, and I think that's partly because of the evidence. Lining that up with these 4 recommended charges today, I would note that 3 of them, the way the draft report is written, the excerpts you've released, suggest 3 of them are chargeable even had there been no violent insurrection. And I'm curious if you could walk us through with a little more detail now that Rachel and others that we've laid out some of the overview. When did you in your investigation begin to realize that as horrific and terrible as the insurrection crime was, the violent attack on the Capitol, you were finding, according to this new material today, multiple other crimes that would be illegal, such as impeding the counting of the votes on the 6th, the Eastman coup plots, etc. They'd be illegal even had the insurrection never occurred. When did that cohere for you, and why is that important?
It's a great question, and it actually started to cohere fairly early in the investigation. When you talk about the unprecedented nature of what this committee did, let's think back to what we knew after the events of January 6th, though, almost 2 years ago. We really knew very little about Donald Trump's specific role. We knew nothing about the fake elector plot. We knew very little about this pressure campaign against state legislators. We didn't know how far it went. And so we know so much more about that now. And we began very early on to see that January 6th was not a date in isolation. It was the violent culmination of multiple and failed lines of effort to overturn the election. And only when all these other avenues failed did we see the president incite this mob in a last-ditch effort to stop the transfer of power.
Congressman Schiff, it's Joy Reid. This has been such a comprehensive investigation, and these conclusions are historic. Now that we've had a president who has been charged essentially with attempting to with attempting an insurrection, aiding and abetting an insurrection. As legislators, have the members of the committee had conversations about what you might be able to do legislatively? Now that we've seen all the little soft spots in our constitutional republic, that Donald Trump tried them all, the Justice Department, the states, he tried every way of trying to overturn this election. Are there conversations about recommending potential legislative fixes to the Electoral Count Act, things that we can do to strengthen our democracy should there be another Donald Trump, somebody with the same proclivities to act against democracy?
Absolutely. And in the report that is going to be released, I think, on Wednesday, if all goes well, you'll see detailed recommendations of our committee as to the reforms needed to protect the country going forward. Among the foremost is a reform of the Electoral Count Act, which we may actually get done in the omnibus bill. We're still negotiating that. And this is that act, of course, that's more than a century old, that governs what takes place during the joint session, under what circumstances, and how you would challenge a slate of electors. But it's important to point out, even though that's a key recommendation of ours, that really wasn't the problem on January 6th. Luckily, the elections in these battleground states really weren't close. The allegations of fraud were completely bogus. This reform is trying to address something that could happen in the next election, and that is, what if it comes down to a single state, and what if it comes down to an interpretation of this old law? We'd be much better off if we set out clearly what's to happen in the joint session. But I also think, Joy, one of the most important reforms is one that we've been pushing for quite some time. It's part of the Protecting Our Democracy Act that I introduced, and it would allow for the expedited enforcement of congressional subpoenas. You're going to see that, some of the subpoenas we have outstanding and have been working on for months, aren't going to be effective before the end of this session. Donald Trump knew that. His allies knew that. They knew they could delay and essentially delay justice enough to deny it. We need reforms that will strengthen and speed congressional accountability as well as many other reforms.
Congressman Schiff, it is Simone Sanders Townsend. I want to ask you about the Ethics Committee referrals that were detailed today in the summary. What is going to happen with those Ethics Committee referrals? In less than 16 days, Republicans will be in the majority in the House of Representatives, effectively in charge of the Ethics Committee. And I have to wonder if any of those Republicans will attempt to hold Kevin McCarthy, Jim Jordan, or others who are named accountable.
You know, it's a good question. And here we were wrestling with what's the proper remedy for members of Congress that violate their oaths, that are unwilling to show up when they're given a lawful subpoena in a legitimate investigation. And we weighed, should we refer them to the Justice Department? You know, we did refer some of these people to the Justice Department for prosecution. We held them in criminal contempt. And when we did that, and here I'm talking not members of Congress, but others, we were only batting 50-50 with the Justice Department. It looked like that would be a, potentially problematic remedy. And what's more, from the perspective of the separation of powers, it really ought to be Congress enforcing discipline among its own members. Now, the Ethics Committee is the one committee in Congress equally divided between the parties, so it shouldn't matter that much who's in the majority or the minority next year. We would hope that it would operate in a nonpartisan fashion, although I have to say the record of that committee in recent years has not been encouraging.
Congressman Schiff, I wanted to ask you about one little divide in both the written report and the public presentation today in today's public meeting in terms of criminal referrals. So there's these 4 charges that Congressman Raskin today explicitly described as referrals to the Justice Department for potential prosecution of the former president. But then there's 2 additional charges, including seditious conspiracy, that are mentioned in the introduction to the report. They're separate. They're cast as something that the Justice Department should look into, but they're sort of not described in the same way that those other 4 charges are. Why was there that divide? What's the distinction between the 4 charges where there is a referral and these other 2 that you're essentially commending to DOJ for their attention?
I think the difference is really this. With respect to the 4 charges that we enumerated and went through the evidence on, it was very clear what the evidence was as to each element of the offense. But we were also mindful that the Justice Department is in possession of evidence that we don't have. And there were other offenses that also may be chargeable, and we didn't want to neglect them. We didn't want to necessarily set out that we have all of the evidence that we need, but that the Justice Department may be able to fill in some of the pieces. So we wanted them to be included, and we were at great pains to say, hey, just because an individual isn't named doesn't mean there's not evidence that they may have engaged in criminality. Just because an offense hasn't been enumerated, it doesn't mean that the Justice Department shouldn't consider other offenses. This is not meant to be exhaustive. It is meant to be very careful. And we wanted to be able to, dot every I and cross every T in what we were recommending, because we understood just how unprecedented this situation is. And we went forward with it because our democracy was the victim of this attack, first and foremost, but it was also directed at the Congress, and we felt we had a responsibility to share our findings with the department.
It is Tuesday, the 20th of December of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Well, how many times have we said that before? Well, quite a bit over the last 5 years, indeed. Hey, how are you? We march irrevocably towards the date of destiny, and that's when Christ our Lord supposedly just popped up. Somewhere in the desert, 3 wise men found him, brought him some goodies. And good thing, too. So, I always like, to be honest with you, I always like the Jesus story. Regardless of its historical accuracy, just the narrative of love and peace. I don't know, it just appealed to me. Jeez. So it's a bit bothersome that now people have like perverted the love and peace part, where it's like, I don't know, hate, bigotry, greed. I don't know. I was going to say the only thing missing is the fatted calf, and then I thought, that fatted calf was gold, wasn't it? Sort of like a orange kind of color in a way. Has some orange in it, maybe. Yeah, so they got a fatted calf, all right there in Mar-a-Lago. And they worship at the fatted calf. And well, they should, because, when you're empty inside, I gotta blame somebody. And how do you fill up your emptiness? Well, you do it with material goods. Mm-hmm. And then say you have economic anxiety, when it's really just pure racism. And you're a greedy mofo, and you are not following, the Jesus story, as we all know and love it, in peace and goodwill towards people on earth. Yeah. Why just men? Why is it always men? I used to even, back before I took the advice of grammarians back in the day, that it was supposed to be a unisex type of title. I still question that legitimacy of it. But regardless, goodwill to all. How do you like them apples? All right. Well, I actually have finished. I did well. I got everything out and to be delivered before Christmas. Yay. Now I just got to get some cards out to those that I'm sorry, I can't buy gifts for everybody. You get gifts for the grandkids, you get gifts for the nephews and the nieces. And then, I don't know, if you feel you can, well, then you get, gifts for your sister and her husband, and your other sister and her husband. And then, I don't know, does it go on? Yeah, it does. Because I got nieces and nephews, and now they all have kids. So, right there, I was able to do that. And now for, friends, I just got to get a couple of cards out, and then I am good. So, okay. Well, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and as we like to say, maybe happy holidays, because there's a lot more holidays out there than where we come from. And good thing, too. I don't know why people are so upset about other people's holidays. I embraced them. There's food everywhere. Every holiday from anywhere in the world has food. Why would anyone want to deny a holiday if it comes from another part of the world when you can have food? Jeez. That's what makes America great. Come on. We shouldn't have to, get in wars with people just so we can have their food. Well, I don't know. Maybe we will. And maybe we are. I made the bad mistake of listening to Barnacle this morning on Joe and Mika. Sometimes I wish it was just the Mika in the morning, but that's just me. But anyway, Barnacle, whoa, he's kind of going off on a little bit of Boston bigotry there against refugees, asylum seekers at the border. These people didn't come invited. Well, when you're a refugee and an asylum seeker, usually you're kind of forced into a predicament where you got to knock on a few doors, right? My God. Totally missing the point. It's like, I don't know. It was sort of. It was pointing a finger at those who are the least of us at Christmas time and blaming them for their predicament. The only problem is that probably Barnacle's priest feels the same way. They can't root out all of the, anti-abortion idiots. There wasn't even an abortion type of thing until, the middle of the last century. Just saying. Of course, the whole idea of priests was that Church had to figure out some way to keep women from inheriting all that property. Priests can't marry? Well, they were getting married quite often. It was sort of like a common occurrence. But then the wives were getting the priest's property, and the church didn't like that. Nope. You don't get to run a crusade by just letting people pass on their wealth. Please, my God. And that's what they said, too. My God. All right. Fighting over a blanket. Fighting over a scrap. That's what we've been reduced to. I always like to think that civilization means that we would like do the things to avoid that which might destroy us. Okay? I hear moms in the local area. Now, why is it the moms that are being just bear with me now, okay? This is statistically proven, and moms, by and large, seem to be pushing the anti-vax agenda. But now I'm hearing that, people should just let their kids rebuild their immune systems. But, without vaccines, right? Okay. They're already petri dishes, don't you know? The idea is to keep the diseases from spreading from those little petri dishes. That's why we inoculate them. But no, they want their kids, to die from diphtheria. They want us to go back to the days of the horse-drawn trolley. One of the reasons that the internal combustion engine was invented is because of all the shit in the road. People were dying of diphtheria from the shit in the road. Please. And I got to tell you, diphtheria deaths dropped dramatically after the internal combustion engine came into being. Now, there was an electric model, but somehow, I'm just saying, somehow they got elbowed out of the way. We could have had electric standalone battery-powered vehicles from then. Can you imagine the technology we would have by now? We would be Jetsons living up in, cloud penthouses. Or penthouses in the clouds. There you go. Yep. With Jane, our wife. George is obviously the husband, if you're of that persuasion. And that could be anybody. So there you go. Even a Doug. A robot maid. I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about the Jetsons, there is certainly something a little odd about how that all would exist. Okay. And I don't know, there was a little bit of, now I'm seeing a little bit of class and racial issues that might have been a little bit untoward now that we've evolved to, past the two-dimensional cartoon existence of our lives. Some of us have. A lot of us have not. Not you out there in this radio listening land, because you wouldn't be here if you were enamored, other than just the humor of it, or the perverse humor of it, of the two-dimensional cartoon life. So, yeah. I see a lot of empty souls where I live with the F Biden flags. They just go right past the, let's go Brandon. There, you see those. Let's go Brandon. But a lot of them just bypassed the let's go Brandon stuff and went right to the fuck Biden. And they're going up. More of them are going up as, as we get closer to this guy getting, possibly moving towards a conviction of sorts. We can only hope. But I suspect there's going to be an outcry. There always is with this group. And I think that maybe the DOJ, the FBI, and other elements of the law enforcement system that have not been saturated by, let's call them what they are, neo-fascists. That's why it's so hard to go after these people. There's so many inside these law enforcement agencies. We need a rat hunt to root out all of these neo-fascists out of our law enforcement and government. And we can't use the excuse that, oh, well, they have a constitutional right to destroy America and representative democracy around the world. Boy, you got to be, I don't know, you got to be a deplorable maggot to believe that BS. And that is not what we are. Okay. Did I one time think that I could be a minister? I don't know. I always thought I might want to be a priest, or I didn't always think. I got to seminary school and realized, I don't know, maybe the material venal existence might be kind of fun to experience for a while. Is that what I thought? Well, I don't know. There was a little bit more politics involved, and maybe what one could balance good thoughts with good works, good actions. And I felt that maybe I ought to be out there doing the good work instead of sitting around thinking all the time. And that's what I did. But anyway, it being that time of season, it sure does take me back to the days of when we did everything with in Latin with a little bit of Greek. Yeah. That's how we did it back in the day, kids. None of these guitar messes. Boy. Anyway, the point I was going to make is that there was this minister in New York, I believe, who got robbed during mid-sermon of about $1 million or more of jewelry that he was wearing at the pulpit. And that seemed a little bit odd, but in the ensuing investigation, it turns out that he's been fleecing his parishioners, and he is now under a lawsuit. Well, not a lawsuit, not only a lawsuit, but a criminal indictment. Think of that. For taking this 56-year-old woman's life savings, 90-some, almost 100 grand. And she's not the only one. So now I'm thinking, as the cops are too, that the stick up during the sermon was kind of get back. Maybe you stole my grandma's life fortune, and now we're going to take some of that jewelry that you've been buying off that largesse. Wow. I don't know. The Catholic Church just does it with a hierarchy. Okay. Sometimes lone wolves are going to act independently. And this guy wasn't a Catholic. I'm just saying that religious types. Some people steal your money in a hierarchy. And some people, do it. I don't know. I was going to say Lenny Bruce style. But Lenny did. He actually put on the Roman collar and went door to door seeking donations into the basket. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's why I never wanted to be a priest. Yes. Anyway, enough of that. I don't know what it is about the season that causes me to think about my religious upbringing, which I got to tell you was totally, and in many instances, independent of my actual parents, okay, who were not so inclined towards religiosity. We got it from Grandma. Grandma was very, shall we say, devout. Yeah. 4 a.m. getting ready to pray with the nuns devout. Jeez. I tagged along. Okay, what do we have today on this fabulous... Oh, my God, look at the time. Well, we have a fabulous show. Do we? Yeah, we have put a show together. And, Adam Schiff is wondering if the DOJ does not act on those J6 criminal referrals. The country will want to know why. On the rest of the menu, at a White House Hanukkah event, Joe Biden condemned the venom of antisemitism. And that will probably get him banned from Twitter now for, harmful content. The Republicans' usual embrace of Trump is strangely muted after the January 6th criminal referrals because they don't know where to go yet. And the Air Force grounded its entire fleet of B-2 stealth bombers following an emergency landing and fire, and none will perform flyovers at this year's College Bowl games. Everything that we hold near and dear is being destroyed. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where North Korea warned Japan over its very dangerous military buildup. And this is after intercontinental ballistic missiles have been lobbed by North Korea over Japan. Okay, just saying. And scientists working on Australia's Great Barrier Reef have created a new method for freezing and storing coral larvae that could eventually help rewild reefs threatened by climate change. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is, of course, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, of course, is the link to our Patreon site. And do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It would really help. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, and I will start giving the URL address for our new Mastodon account, and I'll start getting that ready. It's the holiday season. I'm a little busy, aren't we all? Anyway, you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio, and you can do so on Mastodon too. So Mastodon Plus, I don't know. Anyway, we'll get that linked up on the show notes and links diary that we post on Daily Coast. But I'll get to that in just a moment, because you can also follow me on Twitter, and I'll get on Mastodon. But wherever I am, I'm always Justice Putnam. All right, so you can follow me that way. And I mentioned that I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Coast 10 minutes before showtime. That's where the real reportage can be found from the actual reporters. So you can get those show notes and links by following my Twitter feed or whatever feed I might happen to be on, because you never know what's going to happen with this guy. You can also follow the show. Oh, I guess I better get that over there on Mastodon too. I'll have to do that myself. Can't expect Tom to do that. Tom does so much on that end of things, and others, and so does Kelly. Thank you both. And you can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and I don't know how I'm going to get it over on Mastodon. It might be West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy like I should have done, but who knows what I did. You can also pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. I meant to make that a lot more abbreviated, a lot more, because of all the time that we burned up today. But, hey, it's the holidays. That is my excuse. This first offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is by staff at the Associated Press. President Joe Biden. God, I love saying that word again. 4 years of not being able to say president was pretty rough. Okay? Because, you get a little used to nomenclature. Well, President Joe Biden yesterday, Monday, expressed alarm about growing anti-Semitism in the United States and around the globe, and vowed to fight back against the scourge. Speaking to guests gathered for a Hanukkah reception at the White House, Biden said silence is complicity, and added that it's imperative that hate, violence, and anti-Semitism are condemned by the nation. This year's Hanukkah arrives in the midst of rising and emboldened anti-Semitism at home, and quite frankly around the world, Biden said. I recognize your fear, your hurt, your worry that this bile and venom is becoming too normal. The president added, I will not be silent. America will not be silent. The holiday celebration comes during a spate of anti-Semitic episodes. Former president, I shouldn't have said that word, because we were actually in the Netroots Radio style manual. The P word was really not allowed. But now he's not anymore, so we'll say the former P word, Donald Trump, hosted a Holocaust-denying white supremacist at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. The rapper Ye expressed love for Adolf Hitler in an interview. Basketball star Kyrie Irving appeared to promote an anti-Semitic film on social media. Neo-Nazi trolls are clamoring to return to Twitter, and they have, as new CEO Elon Musk grants amnesty to suspended accounts. Today, we must all clearly and forcefully say, anti-Semitism and all forms of hate and violence in this country have no safe harbor in America, Biden said. Offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Steve Peoples, also out of the Associated Press. The Republican Party quickly and forcefully rallied behind Trump in the hours after federal agents seized classified documents from his Florida estate this summer. 4 months later, that sense of intensity and urgency was missing, at least for now, after the January 6 House Committee voted to recommend the Justice Department bring criminal charges against him. Leading Republicans largely avoided the historic criminal referral yesterday, Monday, while others, pressed to weigh in, offered muted defenses or none at all. Republican Senate Leader Mitch McConnell called for a, quote, immediate and thorough explanation, end quote, after the FBI executed the August search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. Yesterday, he told reporters he had only one immediate observation about the criminal referral. The entire nation knows who was responsible for that day. Senator Josh Hawley, who called for Attorney General Merrick Garland's resignation in the wake of the search, was silent on the committee's referral, focusing instead on alleged FBI missteps. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, a Trump critic who suggested the former president likely benefited, well, politically at least, for the FBI summertime search, said Trump was at least partly responsible for the deadly attack on the Capitol. Partly. The man or no man is above the law, Hogan told the AP shortly before the committee's vote. The divergent responses are a sign of how quickly the political landscape has shifted for Trump as he faces a new legal threat and mounts a third bid for the presidency. It's a marked change for a party that has been defined above all by its unconditional loyalty to Trump under any and all circumstances for the last 6 years. Monday's hearing of the January 6 House Committee, composed of 7 Democrats and 2 Republican Trump critics, likely marks Congress's final attempt to hold the former president accountable for the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Now, this reporter says hundreds of his loyalists, but let's be clear. It's several thousands. Thousands. Okay, as elected officials work to certify Democratic Joe Biden's 2020 presidential election victory. I have to do a little bit of grammar corrections here, Steve. It's not Democrat. Democratic. Please. The criminal referral, which is non-binding. Yeah, okay. Do you have to keep reminding us of that? Not just he. Is the culmination of a year-long investigation that included more than 1,000 witnesses, 10 televised public hearings, and over 1 million documents. The committee, which Republican House leader Kevin McCarthy boycotted and dismissed as a sham process because he's part of a referral to the Ethics Committee for his involvement in a coup, will formally disband on January 3rd as Republicans take over the House majority. And Republican House leader is not the leader yet, Kevin. Ever defiant, Trump predicted the criminal referral would ultimately help him. Oh, yeah? Well, such hopes have yet to materialize. Early polls suggest the 76-year-old former president is no lock to win the 2024 nomination, as emboldened Republican rivals prepare to line up to run against him. Top of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The Air Force has grounded its entire fleet of B-2 stealth bombers following an emergency landing and fire earlier this month, and none of the strategic aircraft will perform flyovers at this year's College Bowl games. A bomber experienced an in-flight malfunction on December 10, forcing it to make an emergency landing at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, where it caught fire. The fire was extinguished and there were no injuries. The stand down is significant in that there are fewer than 20 stealth bombers in the entire fleet, and the aircraft provides, along with the B-52 Stratofortress, the air leg of the nation's nuclear triad. The B-2 has been regularly deployed to the Indo-Pacific and more recently to Europe as a show of force, carry a big stick. During the stand down, the entire fleet will be inspected. The B-2 was scheduled to fly over the 2023 Rose Bowl and parade, but it will be replaced by a B-1 Lancer, the 509th Bomb Wing said in a statement. Well, let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? But did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presence, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities, such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
It's time to celebrate.
I'm Tom Hartman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
The Respect for Marriage Act, just signed by President Biden, provides federal recognition of same-sex marriages. This law will protect marriage equality should the Supreme Court in the future throw out the constitutional right to marry the person you love. Let's be clear. For now, the right to marry is a federal constitutional right, and a constitutional right, most people used to think this anyway, was something that couldn't be taken away, which is why we call it a right. But as the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe v. Wade demonstrates, rights are precious and also vulnerable. So, although the Supreme Court can, Houdini-like, make constitutional rights disappear, it can't touch this federal statute, passage of which teaches these lessons. First, equal rights for everyone doesn't mean fewer rights for some. Second, attitudes can change. Approval of same-sex marriage has increased from 25% a quarter of a century ago to 70% today. Attitudes changed in significant measure because gays and lesbians came out in large numbers and people learned they had nothing to fear from their co-workers and co-parishioners and family members. And third, when there is good reason to fear that the judiciary will fail to protect fundamental rights, elected officials sometimes can and will.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because democracy and advocacy begin with you, and freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1790. That was the day that work for many living in the new country of the United States began to change in a very significant way. Samuel Slater operated the first cotton spindle machine to spin yarn in the U.S. in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. The 48 spindle machine ran on the water power of Pawtucket Falls. It helped to transform the textile industry. It also earned Slater the nickname the father of American manufacturing. Slater had been born in Derbyshire, England in 1768 to a large farming family. When he was 10 years old, he went to work at the local cotton mill. As a young man, he moved to Rhode Island, bringing his knowledge of cotton spinning with him. Some back home in England called him Slater the Trader for bringing the technology to the Americans. But Slater was undeterred. He expanded his technology in what came to be known as the Rhode Island system. He built his factories based upon the patterns of family life in New England villages. First, he hired children ages 7 to 12 years old to work in his mills. Then he expanded to hire whole families. Entire villages worked in his factories and shopped in his company stores. Others quickly copied Slater's ideas. By 1815, there were 140 cotton manufacturers in and around Providence, Rhode Island. More than 25,000 workers kept the factory spinning. This textile factory system relied on the cotton grown by the slave labor in the U.S. South. Slater had helped to launch the American textile industry. This was the first large-scale industrialization in the United States. This industrial revolution changed how thousands and thousands of people earned a living. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy conditions, with rain showers early, becoming a steady light rain in the afternoon. We are under an active winter weather advisory. Winds will be light and variable today, and the precipitation during the daytime hours is expected to bring with it about a quarter inch. And then cloudy with showers overnight, lows in the mid-30s, so it could maybe even drop a little bit of snow. We'll see. Looks like we'll have something less than a quarter inch of rain overnight. Winds will be light and variable, and then rain showers early with overcast skies later in the day tomorrow. Highs in the mid-40s, winds light and variable, and it looks like it'll be about 1/10 of an inch of rain. And then on Thursday, it looks like we're going to have quite a bit more rain going through the weekend until Christmas Day, where we might have a little bit of a let-up, and then even more rain next week. Pollen is rated as none here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 32 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is in the low range at level 1. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.34 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 49 degrees and clear. Paris is 52 degrees with rain. Rome is 55 and fair. Kyiv is 31 degrees with snow. Kabul is 34 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 61 and fair. Tokyo is 39 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 61 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 43 degrees with haze. And New York is a chilly 36 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Young Choi and Hyun Hee Shin of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. North Korea today condemned a Japanese military buildup outlined in a new security strategy, calling it dangerous and vowing counteractions while also warning of another imminent test of an intercontinental ballistic missile that we all affectionately know as a ICBM. Japan last week announced its biggest military buildup since World War II, as tension with China and a hostile North Korea and Russia's Ukraine invasion stoked fears of war. North Korea's foreign ministry said Japan had effectively formalized the capability for preemptive attack with this new strategy that would bring a radical change to East Asia's security environment. The ministry also criticized the United States for conniving and instigating Japan's rearmament and reinvasion scheme, saying the United States has no right to question North Korea's defenses. Well, I guess we're way past the love letter stage, aren't we? The foolish act of Japan seeking to gratify its black-hearted intention, an arms build-up for reinvasion, under the pretext of the DPRK's legitimate exercise of the right to self-defense, can never be justified and tolerated, the official said in a statement carried by the North's KCNA news agency. The spokesman referred to North Korea by the initials of its official name, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. North Korea will express its displeasure with action to highlight Japan's wrong and very dangerous decision, the spokesman said, warning of a shuddering shiver to be felt soon. North Korea has tested an unprecedented number of missiles this year, including an ICBM designed to reach the U.S. mainland in defiance of international sanctions.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jill Graylow of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Scientists working on Australia's Great Barrier Reef have successfully trialed a new method for freezing and storing coral larvae they say could eventually help rewild reefs threatened by climate change. Scientists are scrambling to protect coral reefs as rising ocean temperatures destabilize delicate ecosystems. The Great Barrier Reef has suffered 4 bleaching events in the last 7 years, including the first ever bleach during a La Niña phenomenon, which typically brings cooler temperatures. Cryogenically frozen coral can be stored and later reintroduced to the wild, but the current process requires sophisticated equipment, including lasers. Scientists now say a new lightweight cryomesh can be manufactured cheaply and better preserves the coral. In a December lab trial, the world's first with Great Barrier Reef coral, scientists used the cryomesh to freeze coral larvae at the Australian Institute of Marine Sciences. The coral has been collected from the reef for trial, which coincided with the brief annual spawning window. The cryomesh was previously trialed on smaller and larger varieties of Hawaiian corals. A trial on the larger variety failed. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.